Thank you all for your interest in the city of Loma Linda and whatever issues you're here for. Welcome. My name is Ron Daly. I'm Mayor Pro Tem. Our leader and boss, fearless boss, is on vacation, but the workaholic that he is, he's still checked in, so he's on the screen up here. And what he's not telling you, he's not wearing his usual tie, but he's got swimming trunks. Yeah, that's our. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, if you can do the roll call.
Yes. Good evening. Councilman Jindal?
Present.
Councilman Lenart? Here. Councilman Rigsby?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly?
Here.
Mayor Duper?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Looking at the agenda, we had no closed session or workshop, so there's no reporting on that. So Councilman Jindal will now lead us in the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God and deities up above, please give us the fortitude to come together to make the decisions that are needed and are going to be in the best interest of the residents of Loma Linda and our surrounding neighborhoods. Amen.
Okay, are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Thank you. This is the time for any kind of public participation. Madam Clerk, do we have any notes or requests from the public?
No, I haven't received any. I didn't receive any.
Is there anyone that has an issue or comment they'd like to step forward on? If not, we'll move forward. Okay. Conflict of interest. Any councilman have a conflict of interest with any item on the agenda? Okay, that leads us up to a presentation that I've been looking forward to, and I assume some of the people in the room have also. And that is a presentation by San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District Representative Robert Tinchner. And so, Mr. Tinchner, you can come up. As you know, you have, I believe, a board member, right, from Loma Linda. Yeah, and we've heard from him a few times. So he's built you up, so we expect quite a dazzling presentation. All right. And just to set a serious context on this, the mayor and I just ran for re-election and ended a couple months ago. And I had a number of citizens who were concerned and interested in, have heard on television and wherever, read about the water challenges and are worried that their taps are going to run dry here pretty soon. I mean, I heard a lot of interesting questions. So this is an agenda item that is of critical interest to obviously our state and even beyond that, and particularly in Loma Linda. So we look forward to your presentation and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. Thank you for having me. So, yes,
Can you pull a mic a little closer? Yeah, there we go.
it's on. There we go.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
much better.
Yeah. So yes, the drought has been front and center, right, for quite some time now, and it certainly should be. This is the type of photos that we've been seeing, quite dramatic. But tonight, I actually have some good news for you. So the San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District's boundary is shown on this slide in yellow. And what you can see is that our customers are your customers. We are an agency, we're part of the team. Jarb, I interface with him quite frequently on water issues and appreciate everything he brings to the team. But we're all part of a team that are bringing a reliable water supply to this valley. And you can see we stretch from basically Rialto and portions of Fontana all the way out to Yucaipa. And our region is familiar with drought. The drought that's in the news right now is a drought in Northern California. Because as you can see, if you sneak over to the right there, we have been in a drought since 1998 locally. So we've been in a drought for 24 years. And we had a 20-year drought from 45 to 65. That green line represents the rainfall in our valley. So you can see that between 45 and 65, it fell. We had a downward trend. And from 1998 to the present, we're currently in a 24-year drought. And it was during that drought that we were formed to be your drought busters. And that is what we do. So we do that primarily through the State Water Project, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit tonight. But you formed us to keep an eye on drought so that you don't have to. So how are we able to get through the drought? Well, quite simply, it's based on investment. So our region spent $1 billion by the time the mortgage is paid off to join the State Water Project. And that investment pays off in years like this one when we don't have to have harsh restrictions like some of the other areas of California. So I'm going to prove that to you now, why we're in a better position than other regions. It starts with storage. The great equalizer in water is really storage. We want to store the water in wet years when it's available so that when we have these 24-year droughts, we can go to the stored water to make it through. And these shaded areas shown on this figure here are groundwater basins. So think of them like a surface reservoir. They're not, they're underground. They are not a big cavern. So if you've been to caverns underground, that's not what we're talking about here. The water basically fills in the pore space between the rocks and the gravel. And the basins here can be 1,600 feet deep. So that's why they're so large. But the storage resources we have are a huge asset in this valley. As a matter of fact, we have more storage in the Valley District region than the entire State Water Project. We have more than double, about double what the State Water Project has, and it serves 27 million people. We have about 700,000 residents here. Huge asset. But the storage doesn't mean anything if you don't have water in it, right? So the other thing that we've done collectively as a region is we have purchased State Water Project water through that investment, that $1 billion investment that the taxpayers agreed to fund and join. We have brought in almost 1 million acre-feet of water. Now, Loma Linda's demand is about 5,500 acre-feet of water per year. So this would serve the city of Loma Linda for over 180 years if you just had this water alone. A significant investment that the region made. But this is really what you want to see. This is essentially our fuel gauge for the largest basin that we have in our service area. This is the basin that Loma Linda taps, Redlands taps, City of San Bernardino taps. The way you read this chart is maybe the way you're looking at it. The blue is water, so that represents the water. And you can see the water level at the top fluctuates over time. As you scroll over to the right, you can see the effects of that 24-year drought, right? So the water level has been dropping in the basin, but we're 84% full. So that's a good place to be when you're in the midst of a drought like we are right now. That orange line shows you where we would be if we had not invested in the State Water Project. So that basin would be even lower.
Bob, could you mention that this is what we call the Bunker Hill Basin?
Yes.
The water in the Bunker Hill.
Thanks, Joe. I did want to point out, too, you can see that red line. That's when the San Bernardino Basin Groundwater Council was formed. City of Loma Linda is part of that. The word council has confused folks because they're not a council like you. We don't have any authority. We are staff, and we work together to make recommendations on how much water the region should import in order to keep this basin sustainable. The reason I put that line on there is I want you to see that to the right, the basin is in better shape because of the investment that we're making collectively. Yes, sir.
How do you know how deep it is?
We know, it's a good question.
Have you ever been down there?
No, I haven't. So we have hundreds of water wells in the valley, and the more modern water wells go all the way to bedrock. So they intentionally go down until they hit bedrock. And the geologists record the formations as they go down. And so I like to tell people the wells are like a window underground. So we only know what's going on in that window, right? 100 feet away, it could be totally different. But what we do is we piece together all the parts to make the whole. So that's how we know.
I've always wondered, is it like a pointy valley or is it a big bathtub?
It's actually kind of just like the mountains go up, the ground, the bedrock basically slopes up toward the mountains. So it's almost like a bowl tipped on its side. It's kind of the way you could think about it. The San Jacinto Fault that runs through the 10215 acts as a barrier or a dam to groundwater. Otherwise, the water would just flow down the Santa Ana River subsurface. But it's that fault that acts as a barrier and creates the San Bernardino Basin or Bunker Hill.
Is the barrier clay or bedrock?
That particular barrier, I think, is just due to the strike slip. You know, the plates create a real fine powder just by moving back and forth. So that's what creates the barrier.
So if I'm understanding this, an earthquake on that particular, on those two plates could impact the security of our basin.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I suppose it's possible, but it's not something that I've heard anybody has really studied. So
And San Andreas Fault is close to us,
it is.
but you don't see any potential for a major quake, which has been predicted for decades.
Oh, absolutely, we do. Yeah.
That could impact this,
I don't know if it would impact the barrier, if that's what you're asking.
or the basin. The basin.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're asking is if it slipped, would it start leaking? And that's a
Yeah.
question I don't know. I don't know the answer to.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Because we've been told if we have the big one at St. Andreas Fault, Loma Linda will be beachfront property. So I don't know if that's
Yeah, I've heard that one too. So we have a basin that's 84% full. It's like I tell people, if your gas tank is 84% full, you're probably not driving to the gas station, right? You're feeling like you're fairly comfortable. But we also have the planning to show that we're okay into the future. And this is data that the City of Loma Linda participates in. This is our regional urban water management plan. And we freshen this data every 5 years. So the data is always changing, demands are changing, supplies are changing. And the way to read this, the stacked bars represent the supplies we have available to us. And that dashed green line is the goal. That dashed green line is called our reliability factor. So the actual demand that we're projecting is the gray line underneath it. But we did a very extensive study with the RAND Corporation to look at plausible possibilities like changes in population, changes in water use efficiency, changes in temperature, all those different things. They factored that in to the model and said, if you plan for the supplies as shown on this graph, we think you've covered all the plausible uncertainties that you have. Now, the blocks on the top that are hollow are investments that we are planning, so they're not constructed yet. They are enhancements to the State Water Project, like the Delta Conveyance Project that you may have heard. The EIR just came out on that project, very important to this region. It's a tunnel that goes underneath the delta and protects the State Water Project against earthquakes, sea level rise, levee failures, very important to the reliability. And then we're also investing in the Sites Reservoir, a large reservoir west of Sacramento. So you know how difficult it is to get reservoirs built in any state, but in California, we are moving forward with that as well. So those blocks will get filled in as the region invests in those projects.
Let me add one more thing. It's something that came up at the Groundwater Council meeting, I think it was Monday, is that the state law mandate that the city have to build more houses. And so one of the questions that I asked the group is, how are we doing if we have to build 1,000 more homes or 2,000 more homes, or condo? And the answer is, yes, we are fine. And the reason for that is the regional study that we've been doing is do a projection 20 years from now. So we should be doing good.
And the reason we're investing in a new reservoir up by Sacramento is because that's one of the sources. Where's the water coming from? We've made the investment to purchase, and so what's that?
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the rain in the state of California falls in Northern California.
Right.
And so we move the water through the State Water Project and the Central Valley Project. That's the federal project into the Central Valley. But yeah, most of the rain falls in Northern California, but most of the people live in Southern California because it's sunny and warm almost all the time, right? So the nice thing about the Sites Reservoir investment is that we already have the infrastructure. We already have the aqueduct to bring the water. So all we have to do is build the reservoir itself, and we can use our existing infrastructure. Same with Delta Conveyance. It's an enhancement, or think of it as maintenance, like you would do to your house or your car. It's just needed maintenance for the State Water Project, but we already have the aqueduct to bring it.
And that leads me back to kind of the disaster-oriented questions I've already asked about earthquakes, because I've seen the aqueduct in various places and so forth. If there's an earthquake and it breaks open the aqueduct, then is that one of the contingency issues there that the state or whoever has said we're in good shape? They're looking at that as well? Or are there ways to block the aqueduct while it's repaired?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have, as I mentioned, more storage than the entire State Water Project.
Right.
What we do in drought periods is we shift from surface water on the State Water Project to wells. So we have that ability to go back and forth, the retailers. In Loma Linda, you focus completely on wells. So if the State Water Project went down, everybody would just shift to wells until it's back up.
Okay.
And there's 28 other agencies dependent on the State Water Project. So if it goes down, trust me, it's going to come back up pretty quick. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people working on it. It's going to make a splash.
And one more thing is
Yeah.
part of our city of Loma Linda investment is about $250,000 a year.
Yeah.
To the Groundwater Council group.
So we talked about water supply and its importance, but we also want to acknowledge water conservation. You know, everybody in this room makes a difference, and so we just want to say thank you. This is a look at how much we cut demand as a region in 2015, the last drought we had when Governor Brown was in office. That one was pretty severe, and we actually had mandatory cutbacks. You remember that? And we spoke with the state and asked them not to do one size fits all this time, and thankfully they're not. They're not doing that. There are some regions that have mandatory restrictions. Our region does not, because we have storage and we've invested. So we appreciate that. But what I want to show you here is that we've kept the demand off. So a lot of times you'll hear of demand rebound and things like that. But what you can see is the demand is basically just trending with the population. So what that means is we're continuing to use water efficiently. So we want to keep doing that. The analogy we use, I mean, right now, we have pretty significant stored groundwater. But if you think about a financial emergency fund, let's say you have some money in an account that you have for uncertainty, and you lose your job, are you going to spend at the same rate that you did while you had a job if you're, using your emergency fund? Probably not, right? What you're going to do is start to look for ways that you can trim here or there to stretch your dollar farther. And that's really what we're talking about here. We planned ahead, we prepared, we've been proactive, we have our emergency fund, but we have no idea when our current drought will end. So the prudent thing to do is just do what we can to try to stretch those supplies. So we just try to encourage people that maybe you could do something else to save more water. Go ahead and do that. If you've already done everything, then great, thank you. But water conservation definitely helps us stretch our water. And that's all I have for you this evening. I like to end on this slide. Hopefully you have a little more peace of mind. I know you've had Director Harrison here, so he's been giving you that peace of mind. Now we're just reinforcing it. But anyway, I like to end on this slide because this is a drought-tolerant landscape. Sometimes we think of drought-tolerant landscapes as being rocks and cactus, which is okay if you like rocks and cactus, but not everybody does. So this is has a lot of texture and color, and we have a couple of websites up there that will help you do this type of thing for areas where maybe you don't need grass. So,
what is the firewall that prevents Gavin Newsom and a rogue legislature from robbing our water?
well, the current firewall is our water law, California water law, but I think the legislature can change laws. So, right now it's water law that's protecting that.
It's hard to pump the water uphill, so.
Yeah. Well,
The water from Sacramento's gravity flow down to us.
the other thing too,
We can cut the supply down.
yeah, the other thing too is we already have agreements with other agencies to sell surplus water. So that's basically sharing with our neighbors. So again, there's not a lot of reason to come down and try to take water from us when we already have a plan to share if we were to have a surplus. We are projecting a surplus, but there's no way to know, right? The tree ring studies show droughts that were 200 years long, if you look backwards. So we don't know what the future holds. So we'd rather continue to plan and continue to develop and have too much and then share it than not have enough. So that's been our approach.
Yeah, I'm not talking about a surplus. I'm talking about mega drought, no water left, and Los Angeles goes, oh, we've got more votes in the legislature than the Inland Empire does.
Yeah.
And we have not succeeded in seceding. That's a risk. It's a risk. Those
Yeah.
guys, they stop at nothing. Theft is their vocation.
Okay, other questions? Councilman Bowden?
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, I got 3 questions.
Sure.
How does Loma Linda do in comparison to other cities in our region when it comes to water usage, water conservation, et cetera?
That's a good question. Go
I'm
ahead,
not sure
John.
compare about our neighbor city, but the city of Loma Linda, as far as conservation, we're doing very good. We, when the Governor Brown mandated that the city have to conserve, reduce by 20% by 2020, we exceed that 20%. And we still continue to conserve water in the city of Loma Linda. So,
Yep, he would know better than I would, yeah, in
Got it.
terms
So
of
no comparison to other
specific
cities.
Loma Linda. What's that?
I said no comparison to other cities.
Well, the state is the one who mandate
Got
and keep track of it. Some, our neighbor city get fined
Yeah.
from did not conserve, and we did not.
Yeah, last time Redlands got a fine.
I didn't want to say it.
Yeah. Big
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
How about San Bernardino? We have a board member from City of San Bernardino Water Department.
We haven't quite met up to Loma Linda's efficiencies, but we're doing well.
Good.
But Loma Linda has a remarkable record. We see those numbers all the time.
All right, goes to my second question. So we're always looking for ways to improve. Do you have any resources for Loma Linda or any ideas of how Loma Linda could do even better than we're already doing?
We certainly do have resources available. We do have some programs that are available to Loma Linda. You know, we have a water use efficiency program, and we have staff that focus in on working directly with agencies like Loma Linda, and I know they have reached out or yeah, go ahead, Jarb.
One more thing. I happen to be a vice chair of Groundwater Council. So we are the one who approve all the incentive that we give out to the city and businesses, and the city of Loma Linda did take advantage of that. We installed the artificial turf at our fire station and used the grant from the Valley Water District. We installed the the weather station that we received a grant from the water district, Valley Water District. So
Out of curiosity, do we have any kind of grants to like make that more of a thing?
the city don't have the grant or incentive for residential, but they do have for commercial. You still do, right?
Oh, for turf
Yes.
removal? Yes, we have a program that actually pays you for water saved. You can do whatever you want.
So
You choose whatever the strategy
For
is.
the
Not
commercial though, but not for residential. So
are we considered commercial?
the city is,
City-
yes,
okay.
yes. That's why we already used some of them, yeah.
Got it. Okay, and then my third question isn't related to Loma Linda. Water, so once we use water, I know one concern just in all of SoCal has been water not getting to the ocean, so you have negative effects on the environment there. I know the Santa Ana watershed has been a big discussion topic. Is there anything happening to rehabilitate these areas and preserve them for future generations?
Terms of water getting to the ocean?
So water runoff, so what I'm thinking is like once we've used water, is there something we're doing to replenish our artificial rivers and the habitats that lie within the
Yes.
Santa Ana watershed?
Yeah, there is, and also, there's a lot of water that still flows out to the ocean. Just to touch on that topic, we've lost well, not lost, but about a couple million acre feet of water has gone out to the ocean since about 1990. So we do have plans to try to scalp a little more of that off, and I think we can do that without causing any harm. Right now, the Santa Ana River is essentially a recycled water stream. So that's what keeps it going. The recycled water is filtered, so it's good, clean water. The fish loves it. And so that's really what the region is using to keep the stream wet. Recycled water is drought proof. So the water is here, rain or shine, right? We take showers, we flush the toilet, we do everything no matter what. So it's a good source of water for the river, and I think it's going to be fine. We're always going to have a dry stretch between the foothills and E Street. You know, that stretch, we just don't have recycled water right now. East Valley is developing a plant. They're going to be recharging a lot of that water, so I'm not sure how much will end up in the stream. But we're a very arid region, you know, so I don't even know what these streams looked like before we really built up the valley, but they were probably a trickle in the summer, you know.
Let me add one more thing, is that part of our Groundwater Council group is San Rafael Valley's Water Conservation District. So Water Conservation District office is right here in Redlands. Their job is to punish the groundwater. They have basin, they have spading basin.
Mhm.
Are they part of Seven Oak Dam? They are, right?
No, that's us.
That's
We
you,
have the
okay.
water right, yeah, downstream of Seven Oaks, so we're taking more water.
So we have an agency that keep track of how much water we put it back in the ground. And also save endangered species, fish,
Right.
what else we saving? We save a lot of.
Yeah, both land-based and aquatic species. We have a habitat conservation plan, yeah, that we are finishing up as a region.
So I actually have a fourth question on that.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why cities don't reuse the water that they recycle? So for example, say we have 100 cubic feet of water someone's using. Out of that, 60 feet is recycled. Can we create a closed loop system where that water remains within the city?
You could. It's typically an economic decision, something like that. So that type of system is expensive. So, generally you just evaluate all those things alongside other alternatives, and if it makes sense, that's when you would see a city doing that.
So let me add one more thing, is Loma Linda is part of the team, okay? And our waters, when, like you said, when it's runoff, is go to Santa Ana River, which is all percolate down to Bunker Hill Basin. So we really we're not creating new water, we kind of recycle our water, really. So we use water, we dump it out to the sewer treatment plant in San Bernardino. After they treat it, they pump it back into Santa River or Bunker Hill Basin, and when the city pump it up and use it again. So we really use our recycling water, like
Yeah.
Bob said.
Thank you.
Councilman Leonard?
I was just wondering, if we're at 84%, has anybody done any studies to see at what level you'd have to get to before the bodies start showing up, like in Lake Louise?
We are taking a look at establishing management ranges for the basin, because it's a good question. In other words, can you take it all the way to the bottom? Obviously not. So some of the things we're looking at is how much has the basin replenished itself in its history. So we feel like that's probably a good bottom level to set. We want it to fill itself back up. But the staff are currently working on some of those things, and once we get farther along, we'll bring that back to you and show you what we're thinking at least on. And then the idea would be that when the storage level goes to certain places, it triggers actions. So as it gets closer to the bottom, we buy more water, maybe. As it starts going closer to the top, maybe we back off a little bit, put our money into something else. But we're hopeful that that will be useful going forward. Yes.
How do we deal with the different levels and the contaminants that are in each of the levels? Because, we've got the superficial one with rocket fuel, we've got the deep one with heavy metals, and cadmium and thorium and who knows what else, uranium. And then we've got this sweet middle. What percentage of the reservoir is the sweet stuff?
Let me answer this question. We are in that stage right now. We have one of our wells at 1,500 feet deep, and we have a well that about 1,000 feet deep. The one that 1,500 feet deep have contamination with arsenic. And so we just did a survey where we sent the tubing down to different level, groundwater level, and see where the contamination coming from. It turned out at the bottom, we have arsenic coming in, but in the middle, we don't have it. So what we plan to do is we plan to seal off that bottom section. And the city council just awarded a contract to Tetra Tech to do that specification for us to be able to go out to bid and get a contractor that can be able to seal off the bottom section of the screen and so that we can pump the water from the middle level of the screen. So we constantly, like Bob said, testing the water at every level, the water quality.
And we've been for years doing our fair part in taking out the jet
Yes, we are.
rocket fuel.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah.
We have been working with Lockheed Martin, who, like I said, contaminated our groundwater basin with jet fuel, which is called perchlorate. And we have agreement with them where they can use our city property to install the treatment plant. You went and look at it
Yeah.
on Colston and Richardson. By doing so, they use the city property for free because they don't pay rent, but they pay for the electricity to pump the water up from the ground to the treatment plant and treat the water for us. We have to use that pump first so that they can clean the groundwater, which benefit the city. We don't have to treat the water, and we don't pay for electricity. The city just have to pay for electricity to pump the water from the treatment plant up to the reservoir. So that's benefit of working with Lockheed Martin. Dave, you can't use that method, okay? Okay.
Councilman Leonard, are you finished, or any other question? Mayor, oh, what, did we lose the
Oops, we
mayor?
lost him.
Oh. Oh, there he is. Phil, you have any questions?
No, you guys asked them. The questions I had, Dusty asked and Davin asked, so I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Can you flip real quickly back
Yeah.
to, you had one of your charts was a block graph, and it showed expansion blocks,
Yeah.
because, that one.
Mhm.
What that doesn't show me is, I remember in one of your earlier slides, that if the water level rises too high, that we begin to have to deal with liquefaction.
Right, that's correct.
And so if we're creating infrastructure that's going to expand our capacity, how do we deal with the liquefaction problem or potential problem?
Well, that's where management comes in. So those bands or those triggers I was talking about, as we see the water level come back, wouldn't that be nice? It's
Yeah.
been a long time. But as we see it come back, if it starts to get close to the top, we would just start taking actions, like not adding more water. We might choose not to recharge water. We might
Because
sell it.
we can't engineer our way out of the liquefaction
Well, we can't.
challenge.
We do have a dewatering plan that we've put together, because we have a significant number of wells in that region. San Bernardino has a lot of wells in that region. Riverside, City of Riverside has a lot of wells in that region. So we have a dewatering plan where we shift production from other basins into this one if we have to dewater. But in a perfect world, we would manage to avoid that. That would be the hope.
Yeah,
But if
okay.
we can't, we've got a backup.
Okay,
Yeah, it's a good question.
yeah, we look forward to that problem.
Wouldn't that be a nice problem to
Yeah,
have
yeah,
again? When I started my career, that was the problem. I've seen it go full circle now, so,
Interesting.
yeah.
And then a much more simple question, and we've talked about Councilman Jindal has been very effective as an advocate for water conservation and having more plants or trees in the city that don't utilize as much water as traditional grass. And I'm assuming it depends on the grass and depends on the trees, but how much water does a tree typically require to be sustained versus grass?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm looking at it. You know the answer to that one? Yeah, you stumped us. Yeah, we don't know. I'm not sure the
So
answer to that one.
if we took
but-
all the grass out of the front of the city and we just put several trees up, we don't know if we would gain any conservation from that or not.
You know, the thing with grass is if you don't overwater it, the only loss when you're watering grass is evaporation.
Yeah,
So when you water, you can lose some to evaporation. And transpiration, which is the amount the plant takes up. The rest of it goes right back in the basin, like Jarb was saying. So it's just a cycle. So in our area, because we have a groundwater basin, we're not losing as much. For that reason, turf removal is not the best bang for the buck in terms of saving water. There's other strategies that are actually more beneficial than turf removal. If you look at pure dollars, you know, what the cost per unit is to save the water. So
Because-
it's just one of the tools in your
Yeah, yeah,
toolbox.
yeah.
There's a lot of tools, but that's one of the tools to consider.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else?
So from that question.
I thought I might trigger you.
What is, would you say, a good bang for the buck? Again, if Loma Linda wanted to be more, do more than what we're already doing?
You know, the best bang for the buck is what we call behavioral changes. You're better off targeting your high water users. You know who they are. You have access to that data. And rather than send out a blanket mailer or blanket advertisements or things like that to people that are already saving water, you're better off zooming in on those customers and really trying to spend more of your time there. Because they're the ones that are struggling, not, you know, most of your people, if you looked at it, you'd probably see you're doing fine, not just like Jarb said. You guys are looking good, but that's what I would do. Zero in on them, maybe even offer to do a water audit, go take a look at their property. You might find that they're overwatering significantly. Maybe they don't have weather-based irrigation controller. They're not doing drip, you know, things like that. But behavioral changes are huge. If you can just get people to think about water differently. You can save a lot of water that way without buying a single appliance or anything.
So I know we have tech now that measures whenever someone flushes a toilet. Are we tracking any of that?
I want to say so.
Yeah, he's been tracking you. so
Yes.
is it-
The city of Loma Linda now have 100% radio read meters
Nice, yeah.
in every residential and commercial in the city. So therefore, the homeowner can log on to their computer and see their water consumption when you're not home, when you come home and flush your toilet. We can actually see that. In addition to that, my staff that used to do meter reading, that go up and do meter reading, now they can research or log on to see who have a water leak in the house. And we actually go hanging, the door hanging with the, if you receive a purple door hanger, you would say that you have a leak at your house. And then the resident will call me, hey, Jarb, do you know any plumbers? So, but we do have that service here in town, so.
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
presentation. I've been on this council for a while. This is one of the most interesting presentations I've heard, so
Well,
thank
thank
you very
you.
much. And,
Appreciate all the great questions, too. It was a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Milford, do you have any comment you want to make? Just one. Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much.
Bob knows so much more about this whole subject than I'll ever hope to know. He is my water guru. He's the first man that I went to when I ended up involved in this. The one thing that I think we should point out is that we're right now spending about $60 million to build a new water line from the Sterling sewage treatment plant that West Valley District just had their grand opening, up to the east end of the valley to go into percolation ponds on land that we previously bought and have built new percolation ponds on. And that's going to take, I think, at the beginning, it's 10 million gallons a day. So that's just a complete circle. That comes from what the people in Highland are flushing down or putting down their sink, comes back, gets treated, and goes right back up. And of course, that's being taken out by by wells from East Valley Water District. In addition, we're going to extend that to the new San Bernardino Water Factory, which is where in Loma Linda, where our water gets processed. And that will also connect to that pipe and go back to the east end of the valley. And it's just, it is a complete and continuing water source that we're adding to what we already have.
So that's
So it's a
addressing the
big investment.
recirculation
Yeah,
question.
drought-proof.
It's exactly right, yeah.
So the old adage is a lie? It always flows downhill?
That was before
Well,
pumps.
it takes pressure to send it up there, but.
Again, thank you very much. We really appreciate your fine presentation. Okay. Next item, public hearing. Request for 12-month time extension for the precise plan of design. This is the senior apartments that are planned in the Grove, correct? Grove development.
Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on.
Oh.
I would like to, before we go on, I would like to introduce the city council to our new community development directors. Our Lorena, she's,
Thank you,
Very
guys.
good.
we went through recruitment process. We interviewed 8 people, the first round, 4 people the second round, and she's our best candidate, and we were very proud of her. Conrad was my partner on the interview panel, and she did very well. And this past 7 months, I purposely did not hire anybody to replace Conrad because I was testing her, and she did very well under pressures, and she did. So I want to congratulate Lorena and for a job well done, and
Thank you.
get ready for a new position. So.
Yeah,
I'm not
I'm-
surprised. She's endured questions from me too, and you're knowledgeable and very kind and patient, so.
Thank you. I definitely, I'm excited for this opportunity. As you know, I've been learning from the best under the wings of Conrad and Jarb. So I know I have some big shoes to fill, but rest assured, just like you guys, I'm committed to the health and well-being and making Loma Linda a more prosperous place. So at any time, feel free to contact me. I'm here for you. I'm your staff, and I welcome your guidance and comments. So thanks again for this opportunity. So on to my public hearing presentation.
Okay.
This is a time extension request for precise plan of design permit number 20066 for a previously approved project, 213 senior residential apartments. The applicant is Dan Carleone with the UCR Group. Again, the request is for a 12-month, 1-year extension as allowed per the original conditions of approval. For those who weren't here to approve the project 2 years ago, it was for 213 senior residential apartments as well as a 4,200 square feet retail building on a 9-acre vacant site. The site is located on Park Avenue within the Mission Historic District. It is zoned planned community, and it is in the areas we call planning areas 2-3 and 2-4 of the Groves Pacific Plan. Just as a recap and as a reference, on the slide is a site plan, the approved site plan that this City Council and Planning Commission did review and approve in 2020. So with this approval tonight, the extension will give the applicant sufficient time to address the rising economic costs and labor shortages and to initiate construction of the project. The project's conditions of approval as amended shall continue to address the project scope of development as originally approved. So some of the amendments in the conditions, one of them includes just the new expiration date, which would be a year from now, on July 28th, 2023, a year from the original approval date. And as well, we are also requiring that the applicant submit plans with the most currently adopted building code in place. Right now we have 2019, and in 6 months we're planning to adopt the 2022 code. So should they submit in January, they would have to make sure that it complies with all the recently adopted codes. So what we're asking you from tonight is to first find the project exempt from CEQA. It's technically not a development project, it's a request for a time extension, so it would be exempt from CEQA. And second, to approve the 12-month time extension request for the previously approved precise plan of design permit. So that is a quick presentation. I know that concludes my presentation, but the applicant as well as his team are here to answer any questions should you have them. Thank you.
Questions, please.
This is the same one where we had the elevator issue, right? Got it. How much of it is complete?
Pardon me?
Is
None.
any- So we haven't started the project at all?
No, that's why he's seeking a time extension request. With the pandemic, the rise in costs and fees and labor shortages, he needs at least another year to prepare for it.
Do we have more of an explanation? So we had like other projects going on, or there's more projects going on in the area.
Somebody?
Did they fall behind? Like, did everything fall
Yeah,
behind?
I'm
or-
going to invite the applicant up to explain his reasoning for you.
Hey, can I jump in here real quick?
Yes.
So, if you guys remember, this is what happened to us down on Van Leuven a few years back, where we had entitled a senior housing project. That developer came to us and asked for a 1-year extension. The minute we granted it, they sold that project to another entity, and then it went south with some political wrangling at the county level. And I just want to make sure we're not getting set up for something like that again. That left a really bad taste in my mouth. And I know these are two different developers, but that was some shady stuff. So I'm not directing that at these folks here right now. I just want to be assured that we're not getting some bait and switch nonsense that's going on here.
Good evening. Yeah. Should we wait for the Mayor Pro Tem to come back, or?
He'll be back shortly.
He'll be back, okay. Well, look, my name is Dave Molnarski. I'm with Transtech. We were one of the consultants that worked on the project with Lorena and Conrad and the rest of the city staff a couple years ago. In the audience, we have ownership, Mr. Steve Reeder, who is the owner and creator and the president of UCR Group, Tom Stoddard, his CFO, and Mr. Dan Carloni, who's the construction director for the company. And to not get into the weeds too much, we all remember the process we went through to get the project approved with the Historic Preservation Committee and the Planning Commission, City Council. And at that time, when we all were looking at growth and development, we had no idea of the supply chain issues and the labor shortages and some of the other impacts that were caused from COVID, and then just some of the issues we still deal with in getting certain material supplies. The UCR Group, as you probably know, is currently very active in the East Valley. They have projects in the Donut Hole over in the Redlands area, San Bernardino, other communities up in the high desert. So they're not speculators. The mayor's not there anymore. They're not speculators. They're developers, and they also own and manage their projects. They have a professional relationship with a management company that's integrated. So there's no bait and switch going on here. But the reality of, again, labor shortages, just finding material, certain types of material. And the nice thing is that material prices are dropping, and we hope they continue to drop because of the rising interest rates in the mortgage industry that's impacting some of the public home builders. So when it comes to multifamily and other products, I think, unfortunately, it hurts in one aspect, as your city manager was indicating. The state says we're in a housing shortage and we're supposed to figure out how to build more units. So, but that's the primary reason for the extension, is to just allow a little bit more time. And lenders, let's face it, lenders have also shifted the way they do business. Fortunately, the developer you're dealing with has a very robust relationship with the lending community, and they've proven and demonstrated success by having the most successful multifamily projects in the entire East Valley. So both from a construction standpoint, but also the way they manage their projects. I would like to ask for one clarification, though, based upon that revised condition of approval that deals with the building and safety approvals. The project team just went through the entire plan check process with your fire department and public works and so forth, and including the building plans. And I'm just curious if
the plan already went through the plan check with building safety and to get approved.
Correct.
Then your plan are okay with the current uniform building code.
Yeah.
But
Well,
if you have not approved
Right.
by next cycle of the 2022 uniform building code and plumbing code, then yes, you have to make sure that you meet that code.
Yeah.
Again, so make sure that you submit the plan.
There are approved.
Super. That's it.
and we extended the electric lines from the city of Redlands to Park Avenue because some of our neighboring people needed it now.
Okay, so yes, then that's fine, yes.
Yeah,
We
we,
took the opportunity to fulfill our neighbors' needs because, as, not to say that you guys aren't familiar with how difficult it's been to have a labor pool that cannot commit.
Can you come to that, so the mayor can hear you?
Not to say that you guys aren't familiar with how labor pools have changed, but over the last 2 years, the labor pools for construction and development, we're building one project in San Bernardino. Oh, that a little over a year ago, we finished one project on Ligonia. Some of you may be familiar with where Goodman's Market is, and they are doing everything possible because they would like to be inside this complex when we build this. This is not a bait and switch. This property is owned. The taxes are paid on this property. Hey, we don't have situations where we're in escrow waiting to bait and switch, as reference was made. That's not who we are. That's not what we're all about. We're just people that have the common sense to understand that if you cannot get someone that will go more than 90 days for a bid, because the supply chains, right now we are held up on a project that we're doing in San Bernardino because the electrical equipment has taken so long and it continues to be delayed because of the shortages. These shortages were not caused by you, they were not caused by me. We are asking for what our entitlement allowed us, as we processed our plans and paid our fees to process, and we are 100% approved to start construction. And the second that we have more than a 90-day window where someone is saying your framing bid and your framing labor will be good for 6 months, well, then you can finance your project and start. But if you've only got 90 days, the day you start recording your loan, you needed to go back now to the guy that says he can't stand in those shoes. That's been the problem. That's the reason why we delayed. We were able to find a great deal of dirt that we've stockpiled on there that we needed on this site. We're going to continue. They are finishing the connection for Park Avenue to connect to California. So during this time, there would have been a lot of trucks driving through areas that we didn't want them had we been under construction. So there's some win-win for the neighboring areas so that the people aren't experiencing all of the construction activity through their areas. That's going to be finished when we get ready to start. So our ask is in accordance with our approval. We were assured that when we got our approval that we had the opportunity to get a 1-year extension. We're asking for a 1-year extension for what's approved right now, and we will start construction, and you guys will be proud. If any of you want to see what the level of delivery on our projects look like, please let me know, because I am more than proud and more than happy to say we outdo everybody that's in the market. You can't go to Orange County and find a better managed project than what you have right here in this area. So I ask for this extension, and with the greatness that we came here to do something, and we closed escrow on our property long before we were approved because we had the confidence in the city, and we worked hand in hand with the city to be able to get that. So it's not one of those bait and switches where we're in escrow and now somebody else is jumping in. We own this, and we're paying our taxes every year on the dirt that we own. I thank you for the opportunity.
I would just add one more clarification for the councilman. As Mr. Reeder indicated also, the site has been rough graded, the super pad has been cut, and all the utility stubs are to the property. So there's been a significant investment in infrastructure as well, but I think Mr. Reeder passionately gave his explanation, and we're just looking for, staff's recommendation to be approved and adopted by the city council. So, thank you.
Mayor Duper?
Well, I
Go
can
ahead.
respond to that since I think he was primarily responding to me, if you'd like me to do that.
Please.
So, and I stand by what I said. We entitled a very beautiful senior project here in the city a couple of years ago. And the developer came to us very similar, said, hey, I can't raise the funds, I can't get the construction going, I can't make it happen. And little did we know, there were some ulterior plans going on behind the scenes. We were forced to accept another development there. However, let me tell you what we didn't allow. We didn't allow them to modify or make any changes to what we had entitled. So although that project came in and has actually caused us some issues in the city, it still is beautiful and held to the same exact standard as it was originally. So I'm just throwing it out there that if that were the case, and hopefully it's not, and I, frankly, I'm going to say what I'm going to say because I don't want it to happen again. So you can be mad at me all you want, but whatever gets built there is going to have to be the exact same thing we approved originally. And I hope it's going to be the senior housing that we desperately want. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fair enough?
Thank you.
Okay.
Got a question.
And everybody was looking at me when they said they need more senior housing, so that's. Go ahead, Councilman John.
Yeah, so I heard an explanation, but I didn't get an answer to the question. With the other projects that have been happening, everyone's been dealing with supply chain issues. What separated these other projects from this project that made this one fall behind?
Well, first of all, I don't know what projects you're referring to. I can tell you that our firm, TransTech, we work for approximately 50 public agencies in Southern California. We act as plan checkers, city engineers, public works directors. We do a lot of work throughout Southern California. We also work for private developers like Mr. Reeder and others. Our shop alone has experienced delays in projects not moving forward because of supply chain issues and other issues. With regard to some of the projects, there are projects that are struggling. If you drive throughout the region, you'll see projects that have been sitting. I can think of several in San Bernardino, Riverside, Fontana, that have been sitting for inordinate amount of time because they've had issues with getting either subcontractors. Now, there are projects that are continuing to spend money. They're continuing to spend more money, I'm sure, than what they initially intended on spending, but they're deep into a project, and you got two choices. Once you're into a project, you can either abandon it or you can kind of spend your way through it. Public home builders, I know for a fact, I sit on the Building Industry Association Board of Directors locally, and a lot of our fellow building partners are basically shutting down for the next 6 months. They're not putting any more property into escrow. They're dealing with the inventory that they currently have. You have one of those public builders, Lennar, in your community. I talk to that group every day, and they just put the word out that that's going to be their MO going forward through the rest of the year. We also have midterm elections coming up. So there's a whole host of reasons. And not to say that people aren't going to continue to build, but the circumstances as to why they're building and how they can continue, from my experience alone, I think it's a variety of reasons.
Second question, so the expiration for this was July 28, 2022. We would have probably known that the project wasn't going to be delivered at least 6 months in advance. How come this is coming to us now instead of like half a year or more?
The conditions of approval allows them to submit an extension request 30 days prior to expiration. It didn't come last month because I was getting ready to go to, on my vacation, so it's only a few days later. But yes, as the conditions are written, it says 30 days before expirations.
When do we know that this wasn't going to be completed on time?
Well, I don't think it was, I mean, again, I hate to speculate, but I'll make a couple comments. First of all, it's quite common, as your director just indicated, usually for any type of an extension, the standard condition is 30 days or approximately before the expiration, even for subdivisions. I personally have tried to come in and get extensions on projects with agencies 3, 4 months, 5 months, whatever, and they refuse to take the application. So I think it's an industry standard of sorts. But again, circumstances leading up to this date and time, the market, again, this isn't a single-family subdivision. As you heard this evening, the developer has continued to invest and try to move the project forward where it makes sense to, by utility extensions and roadway extensions. But I think this was something that, again, just given the circumstances, it made no sense when they, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, I don't think developers don't think of it in that context. Yeah.
If this were to be passed today, when did you say you would start development?
Within the year, we'll start development. The biggest change that's taken place
So
is
the man
the
can hear you.
opportunity to have subcontractors commit 6 months into the future on what things cost. And maybe you have not experienced it, but you need to know that right now we are threatened with a supply chain and that takes everybody but a home builder. A home builder only has one thing to do, is that's that home. When you're doing 213 units, you can't stop until you begin to deliver it. Fire, life, and safety won't allow you to be able to just do one apartment and say, well, one and done. On a house, you can do that. And so the ability for supplies to find some supply at some location, some Home Depot. I have spent, and Dan Carloni has spent, and at least 100 hours getting some electrical supplies for a project that we've got over at Barton and Waterman. And I can only tell you that I am so committed to get it done that I don't want to start this and not be able to have supplies. The electrical supplier that's the largest in the San Bernardino County area wants 68 weeks to deliver all the materials for this project in Loma Linda. Well, I want to have that in half of that, because if I cannot put electrical panels in, you can't move the thing forward. Apartments build differently than a house. If you pour the slab and you don't have the lumber, you can find lumber by piece, hook or crook, you're going to find it. And one house is different than starting a whole ocean. And that's the reason why today I come to you and say, this will make a lot more sense to you when you see it finished, is that we're committed to deliver what we had promised to deliver when we got our entitlements. The circumstances for this supply chain, I'm not sure if the political people that are in power in some of the other offices, as we roll up the chain to the state and the federal government, recognize what they've done to the smaller moms and pops as well as the great big suppliers. All of them are struggling. And it's difficult to get work people to come to supply this. We've been overcoming these things through the COVID, and as I offered, you could come and see the crossings at Redlands, and it's right there on the corner where Goodwin's is, at the corner of Nevada and Ligonia. And you would be quite proud to see the fit and finish and what we did during COVID.
And so I'm familiar with some of the challenges, but I'm not going to bring my problems to your doorstep. I have the rights in the entitlements that I was given to request a one-year extension. I timely submitted, and I'm before you to ask for that right, for 1 year, and I will start the construction.
So 2 more questions. How long is it going to take from the start date for it to finish?
The critical path shows 28 months from start to finish. Delivery is in 15 months for the first wing of this project. Do you recall the shape of the project? It's designed so that there's a wing at a time that can be delivered, that the fire has to be approved, which is the most important thing for the fire detection, before you can deliver the second section.
Got it. So from my understanding, on July 28, 2022, or 2023, sorry, you're going to have one wing complete?
I'm gonna have what complete? 1 week
Got it.
Yeah,
complete?
this is, we're talking about the plans, the.
Got it. They answered the question. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, what's the next question? sir?
That's it.
So, I don't think that the group understands supply chain issues the same as someone that's in the trenches. But let me assure you, I am preparing and I am gearing up so that when I record the construction loan, I have commitments from the top 12 contractors that will be on this job. When you manage this from a development standpoint, you have to have a series of your ducks in a row before you start construction. And that's what I'm looking to accomplish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman
All
Lowe?
right, thank you. Is there any other questions?
We're,
I have a friend who's a contractor, and he's ready to throw his hands up and just become a handyman, and just, because he can't find people to work for him.
Well, send him over.
I get what you're saying.
I would love to have him, send him over, is that respectfully from the people that help with the maintenance and the cleaning on the project, to the people that actually do the heavy lifting to build these 2 and 3 and 4-story buildings. And respectfully, each of them have come to me and said half of their people retired over the last couple of years, and everybody that was frustrated with how this entire society has created some shifts, and I think all of us are learning to work with it. I need you guys to understand that I'm not running out on my obligations as the approval process took place that you all gave me. Hey, I respect what you did, Ed, and I have more than once been to the place where I've had challenges that I've had to overcome. I will overcome these, but today had the conversation and they said 68 weeks. They will lock in the contract if I buy today for all of the breakers and all of the switch gear that these complexes require. And I said, I've never heard such a thing. Steve, will guarantee you delivery within 68 weeks. So I'm saying to you, it's frustrating, and I'm sure you hear my passion, but I'm not mamsy-pamsy, wishy-washy, half-baked, lukewarm. I've got strong feelings, and that's what it takes to build these things.
Sure.
I will deliver. Thank you.
Mayor Duper, any other question or comment?
No, sir. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Thank you. I want to comment that there are a few things in the world that I think I know a fair amount, even a lot about. But there's a whole lot of things I don't know very much about. And construction and development of a project like this is one of the areas that I'm very deficient in. So this has been a learning experience. The other comment I want to make is that the fact that you and your colleagues came tonight to address the council on, basically the contract provides you the provision for an additional year. And that you all came and have been as patient and effusive in your explanations has been informative, certainly to me, and I assume other council members. So thank you. I have a lot of confidence that the project is going to work. And I know there are a lot of vagaries in our supply chain issues and economics and so forth at this point. And it impacts all of us, but I've learned how it has a direct impact on the construction too. Jarb?
Open up the public hearings.
Yeah, will do, okay. Okay, we'll open the public hearing for comments from the public. I think you not only convinced me, but everybody else in the room. So we'll close the public hearing. Okay. The floor is open for motions or other comments from council members.
I move approval of the request.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Second from Councilman Leonard. Madam Clerk?
The motion is to find the time extension request for precise plan of design number P20-066 is exempt from CEQA, and to approve the 12-month time extension request for precise plan of design number P20-066 to a new expiration date of July 28th, 2023, and the approval is based on the original staff report, project findings, as well as the revised conditions of approval. Councilman Jindal?
Yes.
Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
The project was approved unanimously.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
I mean,
gentlemen. We appreciate your patience and your
it
support
was-
very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, and thank you for attending. We've got lots of interesting stuff if you want to spend the rest of the evening here. but,
Come on, Dave, we have more water issues.
Okay, we'll move on to item H3, discussion and public input pertaining to the formation of council districts and change to district-based elections. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir, we have our consultant, is it Doug here tonight? He coming via Zoom.
Either Doug or Justin.
Yes, yeah. Yes, there it is.
Upper respiratory. It's just kicked
Are
in
you ready?
4 days ago.
Good evening, Doug.
Oh. Good
Okay,
evening.
yes, we see you. Go ahead.
Great. Okay. Well, as you just heard, I'm Doug Johnson from National Demographics, and I'm joined by Justin Levitt, also from National Demographics. And it's our pleasure to be here with you to kick off this process. I'm going to start with a little bit of background and information about the California Voting Rights Act, and then I'll hand off to Dr. Levitt to walk through the criteria and schedule and details of how we'll go through this process. So we can go to the first slide, please. So first of all, just to start at the big picture basics, we are talking about how the council is elected. So this is really just a purely election issue. Currently, the council is elected at large, meaning citywide elections, and the top vote getters in a given election are elected. There is an alternative that has always been rare and is getting rarer, called from district, or sometimes residence districts, where there are districts drawn and the candidates have to be from that district, but then the election is still citywide. The catch with that approach is that under the California Voting Rights Act, it's considered the same as the at-large system. And so it's just as vulnerable to a lawsuit, which I'll talk about in a moment, as an at-large system. The only safe harbor that ensures you cannot be sued under the California Voting Rights Act is to put in place a by-district system, where the candidates have to live in a district, and only the voters in that district would vote for who's going to represent that district. And this is all driven by the California Voting Rights Act, which was written not to require by-district elections, but to strongly push towards by-district elections. So we go to the next slide.
what the law did is it took the Federal Voting Rights Act, which has been around since 1965, and we have a pretty good understanding of which jurisdictions that applies to, and it made it significantly easier for potential plaintiffs to force a jurisdiction into bi-district elections. It did this because there were 4 tests that a jurisdiction, or in your case a city, had to fail in order if it was going to be forced into bi-district elections. The California law took away 2 of those tests. So the first one is, before you were vulnerable to a lawsuit under the federal law, the protected class, being Latinos or African Americans or Asian Americans or sometimes Native Americans, that group had to be large enough to be the majority of a district. So if you're going to draw districts, they had to be a large enough concentration where they could be 50% plus 1 of one district. Under the federal law, that was a requirement, and that's not possible in other jurisdictions. So the California law struck that requirement. It's no longer required. Then the federal law had a couple of statistical tests that look for what's called racially polarized voting, looking for whether race correlates closely with how groups vote. And then the second part of the statistical test was, do the candidates who the statistics find are preferred by the protected class voters have a tendency to lose? And so that statistical test is the only piece of the law that remains. And one of the key considerations is the 4th test, which is under the federal law, was that it couldn't just be statistical correlation. Under federal law, you had to show that race was a factor, either overtly or covertly, in the election results. So you tie the statistical correlation to a cause. That requirement is also gone. So now all that's left is this statistical test, which is not very well defined, and it makes it very relatively much more simple for a plaintiff to prove their case, to force a jurisdiction into bi-district elections, and in the end to get a significant financial reward for making that case. And so this leaves really only this statistical test of polarized voting as the basis for a lawsuit. We go to the next slide. So by making it so easy to bring a challenge, this has triggered off what Dr. Levitt and I have written as a quiet tsunami sweeping the state of jurisdictions moving to bi-district elections. So we're at least 240 school districts at our last count, 34 community college districts. At our last formal count, we were at 154 cities that have switched. And just to put that in context, before this law passed, there were only 29 cities that had bi-district elections. So we've gone from 29, added now actually over 154. And so now we've gone from 29 total to somewhere around 190 or 200 total. It mentions one county board of supervisors switch. That's because there was only one county that was not bi-district before the law took effect. So now all the counties are bi-district. And in our last formal count, we're at 35. I think we're now at about 50 special districts. And what's driving this change is not that 400 jurisdictions are violating anyone's voting rights or discriminating against anyone. But what's driving this tsunami is the financial costs. So there's only been a small handful of cases, and unfortunately no city or any other jurisdiction has won a case yet trying to defend itself. And in these cases, when you actually go into court, you're in 7 figures almost immediately. And you can see on the right some of the settlements. Palmdale was the first to fight. They ended up paying the plaintiffs $4.7 million. Modesto also fought on one issue and paid the plaintiffs $3 million. Highland up the road, they actually conceded liability but just fought over the remedy, and just for fighting over the remedy had to pay the plaintiffs $1.3 million in expenses. So you can see these expenses are so high that that's what's driving most jurisdictions to make the switch, just at the first word or just at concern that they might be sued. One of the plaintiff attorneys that brings these challenges has been bragging that by his count, over $16 million in total settlements and court awards have been granted so far. I think that total is actually significantly higher at this point. So that's what's driving this wave of change across the state. And the Inland Empire has been particularly hard hit by that change. We go to the next slide. So with that, I'm going to hand off to Dr. Levitt, but when we can finish the presentation, we're happy to come back, and I'm happy to address any questions about the CVRA as well.
Sure. Thank you, Doug. Thank you. It's a good pleasure to be here tonight. Now, Doug started to talk a little bit about why jurisdictions went to district elections. I'm going to talk a little bit about the how, and particularly the different parts of the process, the data sources, and some of the tools that we're working on putting together in order to make the process go smoothly. In particular, we want to say that the state has set up a process for making this change. They require 2 initial hearings prior to the release of draft maps. This is to educate the community about the districting process and really get input on the composition of districts. We've set these for August 9th, tonight's our first one, and September 6th at our next meeting. Following that, we do release our first round of draft maps at Public Hearing 3, which we've scheduled for October 4th. For October 11th. We hope that members of the community will be interested in submitting their own maps or, their own ideas, even if they don't want to do a full map. Our deadline for that map submission is September 29th, and maps need to be posted at least 7 days in advance of that public hearing, and that takes us to October 4th. That's true for the next public hearing on October 25th as well. Revised maps will have to be posted at least 7 days before that hearing, or the final hearing on November 8th. The state requires a minimum of 3 public hearings to discuss the maps and revise them potentially or make changes. As I said, these have been scheduled for October 11th, October 25th, and November 8th. After each hearing, there's an additional after the first 2 hearings, there's an additional opportunity for community members to submit new maps, revisions, thoughts, comments, and any input they want to provide on the maps or the process. On November 8th, the council can select or adopt a map by ordinance. That map, again, must be posted at least 7 days before it is adopted. If we go to the next slide, what factors do we have to consider in drawing districts? Well, the state actually sets the criteria that we need to follow in order to create district, or to draw district election, these electoral districts. First, on the left-hand column, we have our federal laws. This is what the Supreme Court says we must do. First and foremost, we have equal population. Districts must be approximately equal in terms of their total populations. And for our purposes, we're using this census-adjusted count that kind of makes some minor adjustments to the 2020 census to account for where prisoners reside. But essentially, it includes everyone, children, non-citizens, all of those count toward that 1 person, 1 vote standard that the Supreme Court requires. In addition, we have to follow the Federal Voting Rights Act. While race cannot be the only factor or even the predominant factor in the creation of a district, it's one of many factors that we have to look at and take into account as we look at drawing districts. And so what are those factors we have to take into account alongside race? Well, that's really what this middle column gets at. These criteria come from the 2019 Fair Maps Act, and they are rank ordered in this order of priority. And the first criteria here is contiguity. That means that all parts of the district must touch. Some people will define it as maybe one outside border, continuous outside border. Some people define it as you have to be able to walk or drive from one part of the district to any other part of the district. And obviously, if there are islands or areas that don't connect to any other part of the city, and I do mean like, not connecting in any way, they have to be drawn or connected to the closest part of the city. Second, undivided neighborhoods and communities of interest. This is the one where we often want to spend the most time understanding and trying to really capture what your communities and neighborhoods and communities of interest are. The law says that socioeconomic or geographic areas that are similar need to be kept together for the purposes of fair representation. And so what we're going to be talking about over the next few slides is some ways of approaching communities of interest and neighborhoods, but we really need to hear from the community about what these communities of interest are. Third, easily identifiable boundaries. This is the goal of making it easy for voters to understand which district they live in. And so to the extent that we can follow major roads, canals, rivers, freeways, any division line that would make it easier for voters to understand which district they live in, we should strive to do so. And fourth on this list, and remember it's all rank order, is compactness, which the law defines as not bypassing one group of people to get to a more distant group of people. And this is really where that rank order comes into play. If there is a community of interest that is not the most compact, but we are keeping that community of interest together, or we need to draw a line to get equal population that crosses a major road or is less than perfectly compact, we can do so. But to the extent possible, we need to also keep compactness in mind as we evaluate the final map. The law also prohibits favoring or discriminating against a political party. And for this reason, our data set doesn't include partisan data, and it can't be a factor in the map that is adopted. Finally, in the third column, other traditional districting principles are factors that courts have recognized over the years as being valid to consider. Now, what this means is that we have to consider federal laws first, and then the criteria in the Fair Maps Act. But after we've considered the Fair Maps Act criteria for judging between two plans that are approximately equal, we would be looking toward other traditional redistricting principles as optional. If you want to consider them, we can certainly do so in that final evaluation. And these are factors like respecting the voters' choices, respecting the fact that voters of the city have elected a council, and that it should be up to the voters to decide whether council members continue, not up to the stroke of a pen on the map. Or future population growth. If we know that there's going to be massive new development, or an annexation might change the population number slightly, within that equal population, we have a little bit of flexibility or room to take that growth into account by underpopulating the area a little bit or overpopulating a different area that we don't think will have as much growth. And what is that range? Well, normally for equal population, we talk about that range being approximately 10%. That is that the total difference between the largest and smallest districts should not exceed that 10% standard. If we go on to the next slide, we've started to look at our demographics for the city of Loma Linda, and using that 2020 adjusted population count, the state found 24,855 residents. Divided by 5, because each district has to have about equal, and we get that each district has to have approximately 4,971 residents. So just shy of 5,000 in each district. In addition, as part of our analysis, we looked at that citizen voting age population. That citizen voting age population, this is the population over the age of 18 that has US citizenship. And it's what the courts have used for this voting rights analysis. So the numbers are a little bit different than our total population because of differences in age and citizenship rates among different demographic and racial or ethnic and racial groups. And so it's these that we're going to be looking at over the next few slides, to illustrate where we might see concentrations throughout the city. In addition to these measures, if we go to the next slide, we do want to make use of a whole variety of numbers that help us understand the community as well. And so factors like education, income, renters and owners, single and multifamily housing can help us understand where communities of interest are. Now what I'd like to say here is that, these numbers are not determinative. That is, We don't like to say that the redistricting is just, let's create a district where a majority of the population is in this particular category. But they can help us understand where we do see differences between different parts of the community. Especially if we're trying to understand where community of interest is or what defines that community of interest. A lot of these demographic numbers may help to do so. We also have factors like registration and turnout so that we can look at that across different parts of the city. If we go on to the next slide, turning to our voting rights analysis, we have looked at where we see Latino and other ethnic groups throughout the city. So this is again using that citizen voting age population. And the areas that we see here in the purples and blues are generally under 35% Latino, according to the American Community Survey, a survey done by the US Census Bureau. On the other hand, the areas that we see in yellow and pink, those are over 65% Latino. And so we see a little bit of a concentration north of Mission Road in the northeastern part of the city, where we have one very large census block. And yes, the whole area between California and Mountain View is one census block. And that one census block is about 70% Latino. If we go to the next slide, we also looked at this for Asian Americans, and we see a little bit more of the different colors in this map. But we generally see a concentration along the eastern portion of the city, south of Barton Road, as to where areas that had a larger than average Asian population. We also looked, if we go to the next slide, at our African American population. And one thing you can see here, our African Americans make up about 10% of the city's population. There do not seem to be an area that's very highly concentrated, although certainly that doesn't preclude there being a community of African Americans that is an important community of interest that we want to hear about and make sure is represented under that community of interest criterion in the Fair Maps Act. If we go to the next slide, like I said, in addition to these race and ethnic numbers, we hopefully will use some of our socioeconomic numbers to understand the community as well. On the left, we're looking at the percentage of households that have children at home. And we see that, again, the areas in purple are less likely to have children living at home than the area in yellow. Similarly, renters versus owners. We have the percentage of properties that are occupied by renters. And of course, we see that the areas around the university really pop out as having a high proportion of renters. That can help us perhaps understand better where that community is and where perhaps the homeowners live as opposed to the renters. And again, these are just go to understanding the community and the distribution of your of population within the community. They don't necessarily indicate this must be a community of interest. And that's part of our discussion that we want to have about communities within the city. If we go to the next slide, that really brings us right into defining what a community of interest is. And the Fair Maps Act uses this term neighborhoods and communities. And so NDC likes to distinguish a little bit between the two. One of the things we think about with neighborhoods in particular is that they're often relatively well defined by the city. I like to think of them as the Lego building blocks that make up a city. From the individual apartment complexes, condominium complexes, and others, very small developments, all the way up to your historic neighborhoods and specific plan areas. Hopefully, a lot of these neighborhoods are actually defined by the city, whether it's through a community, whether it's through a homeowners association map, a map of your specific plans or business improvement districts or other kinds of formal districts that the city might have as planning areas. The neighborhoods themselves can often be defined by their physical features, and referencing or talking about the physical features that divide neighborhoods is a big part of what creates barriers between different communities. It may be very difficult to cross a particular canal because there's simply very few roads that cross it. Or it could be the case that that canal creates a community of interest along the residents of both sides of that. And so that's kind of the discussion that we want to have, particularly with neighborhoods. How do those physical features define these areas that need to be kept together? And if we go to the next slide, neighborhoods are kind of the building blocks of communities of interest. We take those individual Lego blocks, if you will, and put them together to think about the communities that make up the city. And remember that the law specifically says included in a single district for the purpose of their effective and fair representation. A lot of times we see that a neighborhood may belong to 3 or 4 different communities of interest, depending on how we define it. It's a university area, but it's also along the freeway. It's also got a canal. It's also got many different ways that it identifies with other neighborhoods. And so our question is, what then is the best way to represent that neighborhood by joining it up with other neighborhoods that have similar issue that creates that community of interest? What's that shared issue or characteristic that we need to define? And again, communities of interest do not include the partisan part of this. It's not about the politics, who they voted for, who represents them. It's really about the issues and characteristics that make up that area. And so, numbers are a part of the way to tell that story, but nothing really beats hearing from members of the community, hearing from the council about what those communities are. And so to that point, to go on to the next slide, NDC, working with the city, is developing a series of tools to try to get residents to tell us and help us understand where the communities are in your city. And we have a whole variety of different tools we have put together for different purposes. Everything from a simple review a draft map tool to a browser-based tool that lets you go block by block to build your own districts. And however you want to get this feedback to us, we really welcome it. We've set up an email for this, and all the comments will go to the city, all the council, as well as us. cvra-dist.base.elect@lomalinda.ca.gov. And if that's a little bit of a mouthful, we have a website set up called drawlomalinda.org, where you'll find the email on our contact page there. In fact, if I can bring up the website, if that's okay. Well, maybe we can come back to that in a second. But we want to highlight the fact that we do have a great website that we've set up. Hopefully we'll be able to go through it a little bit later on the presentation. If we go to the next slide, I'll start talking a little bit about the tools. We have a variety of different tools that are available for people who want different options. Of course, if you just want to write something to us, you can feel free to use that email address to send us your text. But if you want to color in or draw out what your neighborhood is, we have these simple maps that show the streets, including all the major roads are listed. A lot of the smaller roads we can show, even though we don't have all the labels on there. And we give you the total population counts. That's that 2020 census population number for each of these areas. For example, we see that, one of these, we have a red circle highlighting the fact that there are 928 people in that particular population unit. And that's just what it is, the total population of that area. With this map, you can get out your calculators and start adding these together to come up with that, toward that ideal population of 4,971. Or you can simply highlight or color in a particular neighborhood or community that we need to take into account as we're drawing districts. Once you're done, you can submit this either in person, or as most people are doing these days, just take a picture of it on your phone and send it in to that email address on the website. This is a great way to just, show us, illustrate for us where different neighborhoods and communities are, or even begin thinking about how the city might be divided. And then if we go to the next slide, if you are a little bit more familiar with the browser, we do have a full browser-based tool via Dave's Redistricting app that basically allows you to go block by block and create a full set of districts. Essentially what we see here is that what you do, and I say full instructions on how to use this are on the website, actually including a full PDF that goes step by step. Just to talk about the highlights here, you register an account for Dave's Redistricting on davesredistricting.org. Then you'll go click the link on the city's website to get the template, which is blank. You'll copy that to make your own map, and then literally you just paint the city, going district by district, and you can change, you can erase as you go. And then once you're finished, it'll give you a link to your map that you can share with the city. And that's the best way to do it. Share that URL, that link to your map with the city so that we can take a look at it and make sure that it's shared with the council, run our full demographic analysis on it, and provide that to the community as well. This is a really great tool because it really allows you to go into that block level detail and see the numbers and see the communities that we're working with. If we go to the next slide, today it's really about starting this process of answering questions about the districting process, about the criteria, about the tools, and also hopefully beginning to think about what the neighborhoods and communities of the cities are. So if you want to share anything about neighborhoods or communities of interest, please feel free to do so. I know in our last slide, if we go to the last slide, we also have our contact information. Again, this presentation has been posted to drawlomalinda.org. We have the phone number of our city staff we're working with on the project, as well as our email address, where you can send your maps, your comments, and your feedback. And so with that, thank you very much for your time. If we can, I would love to just show off the website. I know I can't share my own, I can share my own screen now, so let me share my screen. So just to highlight our website, when you come in, we have our welcome page, which gives you a little bit of an overview of the project. Our schedule page, which gives the location of the different hearings and the major deadlines. As we go through, we're posting the presentations and the agenda, so they'll be posted right here under the information tab. Once we have our draft maps, the draft maps will be posted onto this nice draft maps page. And we also have already here our draw map tools that include all the different tools that I talked about. We have our public participation kits all ready to go. This is just a PDF from 8.5 by 11 that can be printed out. As well as all the information about Dave's Redistricting, including our guide to using Dave's Redistricting, and the link to our template. which of course you can use as your own blank map template in the Dave's Redistricting app once you get it all set up and running. We also have additional frequently asked questions about the process, resources, and I want to highlight on our contact page, if you want to just send us something directly on the contact page, we have a form here that will go to that email address that we've been highlighting. If you don't want to just send an email, you can just fill out the form. In addition, you can change the language from English to hundreds of other languages using this select language tool up at the top of the page. And so, for example, if Spanish is your language, it will automatically translate the whole page into Spanish. You'll still be able to complete the form. And so with that, thank you very much for your time. I'm glad I was able to share the screen. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
I have a question about some of the logistics of the elections. We have two councilmen who just got elected a few months ago, and let's say they're in two separate districts that are drawn as 2 of the 5 new districts. Do those 2 districts have no election in 2024? And everything else, and the other 3 districts would have an election? Assuming, you know, because we could potentially put all 5 of us in one district, or there could be districts with none of us in them. And how does that affect the 24 election?
So I can jump on that. So which districts are up in which years are up to the council. So when you choose a final map, at the same time you'll choose which districts will be up in 24 and which districts will be up in 25. So whichever districts you designate will hold that election. It has to be the same number of districts in 24 that are the same number of council members currently on cycle to have their elections in 24. And one thing to emphasize is that districts has no impact on anyone's current term. So if a member gets elected this year, but they will serve until 2026, regardless of whether they're in a 24 or a 26 district. But you're right, for council members whose current terms end in 24, if they end up in a district that is up in 24, they can run. And if they end up in a district that's not up until 26, they'll leave the council at the end of this term and then would be able to run 2 years later in 26. But that decision on which districts are up in which year is up to the council at the time you adopt the map.
Yeah, but that answer kind of sounds like we could end up with 7 city councilmen.
No, you can't. That's where that rule of the same number of districts has to be up in 24 as there are current council members whose terms end in 24.
Okay, so then you could still have a situation where 40% of the city could have no election in 24 because there are 2 4-year term people in those districts.
Well, they may or may not be in those districts, but they certainly, you certainly will have 40% of the city will not hold an election in 24. They would be represented by those council members whose terms go until 26. So they would still have representation on the council. You know, if there was a vacancy in one of those 2026 terms, they would be eligible to be appointed or run for that. So they still have representation from the 2026 members, even if they're not in the 2024 district.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Did you want to do a wrap-up or take more questions? Are there any questions? Okay, we've got some questions here. If you want to take those. Councilman Jindal?
Do you have any questions first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Do you have any? A few things. First of all, there was a mention about accounting for future growth. If we look at Area D, which is the part of the area that we were talking about earlier today regarding the 213 senior living apartments, that area currently has a population of 752, according to the website that was provided. City manager, would it be a fair statement to say this is gonna have over 1,000 people in the next 4 years?
Yes.
Okay,
So,
1,000 addition.
So-
That's my point.
I can address that. So this is what Dr. Lev was mentioning. There's only a tiny little range where you can adjust for future growth. So we have to use the 2020 census numbers. But if you know an area is going to grow faster than the rest of the city, you can underpopulate it by up to 5%. We don't recalculate the population numbers or anything like that. We simply underpopulate it by a couple of percent, and really 5 to 8. Mathematically, you could get it to 8% underpopulated, but that's pretty tricky to accomplish.
Okay, so this area, again, 752, is that 5% of the 4,971?
No, it's less.
That's the population currently in the district, or in that area. So if we're talking about adding 300 people or so, that would be about 2 to 3% of the district.
So my question is, right now, we need to have around 4,971 people in each district. How many can I add in any district to account for future population growth? Is it 250 or is it a different number?
Yeah, the total difference needs to be under about 500 people between the different districts. So if one district is 250 over and another is 250 under, that takes you to 500 total.
Got it. So the maximum difference can be 500 from the lowest to the highest.
Hey, can I jump in here real quick?
10%.
I think the question might be answered by explaining what has to happen every 10 years. So my understanding is, with the release of a new census in 10 years, we may have to relook at this whole process, or we have to relook at this whole process again. So this is not set in stone. It's just more or less set in stone for 10 years until the next census, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah, after every 10 years following the census, you do have to look at the numbers again. But that population deviation, that difference between the largest and smallest districts, has to be under 10%, and that has to use our current population totals, not any sort of projection or of future population.
Got it. And to address the mayor's point, yes, we can redraw the maps in 2030, but we're going to have a few elections before then, so that was the purpose of my question. But thank you for answering it. So it's 500 between the lowest and the greatest. My second question, so I tried spending time on the website itself, daysredistricting.org. I wasn't able to get it to a street level, so it gives me large blocks of population. Is there any way where we can get that broken down a little more? I feel like the physical maps allow you to do that, but the website is helpful because it gives you the demographics of those populations.
Yes, so I think Justin's going to show you how to do that right now.
Sure, and I can show you very quickly how to do this using our template. Essentially, what you're seeing here are, they call it precincts, they're slightly larger units. You can go down to the blocks by selecting the block level and then clicking your paintbrush tool and then selecting one of these precincts. For example, if I select this one, now it's broken that down into the individual blocks. If it doesn't go any further, that's because there is no block division there. So, for example, I know I used this one earlier. If we looked at this large block kind of bounded by California Mission, and I did the same thing, all of this area, Redlands, California, Mission Road, almost this entire area is literally one census block. So we can't divide that further, but when we do go into here, select the paintbrush and then select block, and then select an area, it will break it down into those blocks, and we can zoom in and see more detail then. We could even put on labels that show the population, for example. So we can see the population numbers in each of the blocks.
And we have we'll add a couple links to the website. We have a couple of videos that show this both briefly and in depth that we can add to the website as well.
One of those blocks had two different numbers in it that you just showed, 1348 and 52.
Yeah, if a block wraps around another block, the computer's going to put the label in the middle of the block, even if it is not actually. So it'll show the number of the wraparound block inside the surrounded block. If you click on it to the left-hand side, it'll show you the details and the breakdown of that block.
John, question? Do we still have Phil Duper on? You have any questions, Phil?
No, sir. I'm good.
Okay, if you want to do whatever wrap-up, we have, I don't see any other hands up with questions at the moment.
Just the only wrap-up, I think, is one of the quirks of the statute requirements on the process is they want to make sure that as much of the public as possible is informed of this before we get into draft maps. So at the second hearing, the September hearing, it'll actually be essentially the same presentation. We'll do it briefer since it's the second time, but the state does require that there be two essentially identical hearings prior to drawing any draft maps. So if you think of questions after today, you can shoot them to us anytime, or of course, at the September hearing will be the same topics.
Okay, we have a question.
Hi, this is Lorena's staff. I want to add to Jindal's question. We're getting ready to annex 141 acres, and I believe there's only 9 or 12 registered voters. But how do they come into play in the future in 6 years right from now when they want to vote?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, we've been working on the redistricting and had a lot of cities that have had annexations in the works, or maybe even between the last election and this one. And the way that it works is that basically when you annex an area, it will be assigned to an adjacent district. And it actually does have to be an adjacent district if possible. We often encourage cities to include that in the annexation order. Makes it easiest when there's very clear in the LAFCO filings and in your adoption that it's assigned to that district. And then what you do is then anybody who lives in that area votes in that election once that comes up for its normal cycle. And unless that area is more than 25% of a district's population, it doesn't trigger an automatic redistricting. So it just joins that district for the rest of the decade, even if it grows substantially after the annexation. And then in 2031, we take another look at the population, and if you're outside that 10% deviation window, you'll have to adjust the boundaries to account for that growth.
Lorena, any other question?
No, thank you.
Let me just address a couple concerns I have very quickly. One is that we're going to have these workshops where community are invited, and my understanding is that you will work with staff in terms of whatever kind of recruitment efforts we can put forward to get people out. My concern is in the community I live in, I've mentioned this to a number of people, and it's kind of like, what? Well, no, what's wrong with what we're doing? And I said, well, and I'm not hearing a lot of interest from anybody, to be honest with you, and that concerns me. Go ahead, Jarvis.
So what we plan to do is we plan to mail out letters to every homes
Yeah,
in town.
then hopefully they read them, just like they read all their, yeah. So anyway, we will put the effort in, and I'm trying to recruit some people that are neighbors of mine. And I assume you've run into this challenge before as well. But on one of your slides, I think there was some indication that you can also work with city staff on certain kinds of records and so forth to facilitate the process. Is that true?
Go ahead, Justin. Go ahead.
Yeah, we certainly have been working with city staff, particularly with Lynette, on creating on the letter and trying to give brainstorm ideas for publicizing the issue and bringing the issue to community attention. I'll say it's not uncommon for turnout and interest to be particularly low. And it's not just a function that there's an election coming up. We've had processes where even, it's like an ideal time of the year, an ideal, no election in the near future, but still nobody comes or very few people come to the process. I know Doug and I could both share stories about meetings we've had or, where we've had 0 people from the community who have spoken or even attended our workshops.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll get some people, but that was one concern. The other question that I have is after, when we've looked at the map of Loma Linda and we have 5 councilmen, we're all spread out in the city. I mean, it's almost like a natural redistricting, except it doesn't take into account any of the criteria that the state has. Have you had cities where after redistricting, there are districts where they can't find any candidates to run? I'm serious.
Yeah. No. It can make it more difficult. We did have actually a larger sized school district that had nobody run. And it happens a lot in special districts, fire protection districts, water conservation districts, that kind of thing. But it hasn't proven to be a problem in a city. But if you do have a situation where nobody runs, then it becomes a vacancy like any other vacancy. And the council would have the option of either appointing or calling a special election. Now, anyone you would appoint or that would run in that special would have to run from the district. But what we found when that happens in a school district is people have stepped up and they weren't willing to run a campaign, but they were willing to put their name in to be appointed. Yeah. So we haven't had any complete duds yet, but that is always a concern.
And I don't expect it'll be a big issue for us either. But I know that I tried to recruit some people to replace me this last time. And it's not that they weren't interested in the job, but they had no interest in campaigning. I mean, that was the big hurdle. Anyway, just personal experience. Okay, thank you. Appreciate your presentation. All right. I'm being reminded that this is a public hearing, so we'll open the public hearing. Seeing no takers, we'll close the public hearing. Okay. Now we've done everything formal. So, yeah, I'd already put my agenda away, I guess. I got ahead of myself.
That's all we have. Okay. We'll see you in September for the next
Okay, sounds good. We'll see you September, what was it, 6? 6. Yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I can tell you've been through this a few times.
Yes. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Here we go. I already put my city agenda away. Okay, so, yeah, I thought this was going to be about a 40-minute meeting. I was working hard to impress Councilman Jindal to make it go fast. Okay, Item H4, Public Hearing Council Bill R-2022-37. Adopt a resolution to establish the maximum refuse collection and disposal rates effective October 1. Public Works.
Yes, sir. So every year, we come to you that have to do with, I'm gonna call it trash rate increase. And as part of Prop 218, the city have to mail out letters to resident and the property owner, which in this particular case is about 5,200 letters. And the reason
That's at our expense or at?
Oh, yes, it's our expense. Yes. So, and the reason we are doing this is the city have an agreement with the trash hauler, which is CR&R, that they can increase the rate by the Consumer Price Index, or CPI.
Right.
And also, we have an agreement with the County of San Bernardino for waste disposal agreement, or WDA. If they increase the dump rate, we have to include that in our cost. So for this year, the CPI is about 8.59%, and the
Wow.
waste. Oh, this is not bad. Actually,
Okay.
some are more than 8.5. And WDA is increased by approximately 2.28%.
Okay.
Which calculate out for the residential trash rate an increase of about 47 cents per month. So right now, for you and I, our trash rate is about $20.57. It will be increased to $20.04 for the residential. 21, I'm sorry, 21. So we mail out the letters to all the homeowner and the resident, and this include the rental property, and as part of Prop 218, and we received 6 letters back in protest, 9, as of today is 9. And the staff recommend that the city approve the Council Bill R 2022-37 and have the rate effective by October 1st, 2022. The staff report kind of missed it by 2021, so it's supposed to be 2022.
Okay, yeah, I see that. All right, we have a public hearing. Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed. All right. Comments or motions?
I move Council Bill R-2022-37.
I second it.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Motion is to adopt Council Bill R-2022-37, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Loma Linda establishing maximum refuse collection and disposal rates effective October 1st, 2022, and repealing Resolution Number 3108. Councilman Jindal?
Yes.
Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
The item was approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you. We move on to the consent
Move it.
calendar. Now, you gotta let me at least state the agenda item.
You said consent calendar,
I
I
think
moved it.
On the last item,
Second.
I'd like to recommend that our mayor and Mayor Pro Tem personally sign the letter that goes out with the raise in the rate.
Yeah, there you
The
go.
letter already went out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's gone, or I'd be happy to add my signature. Okay, we have,
Second.
we have a motion and a second to adopt. I didn't know we had a dump truck in the city that we had to replace.
Yeah, well, and then
I
I
didn't-
want to add that the reason we have to replace part of our heavy, big equipment is another state law that,
State law?
yes.
So even if it's working
Small,
fine?
it's AQMD requirement.
Oh,
We had to replace our
but can't they just
electrical generator when we'd used it for like 3 hours total.
Yes, and so. Yes, that's why the high lift, the dump trucks, because that's meet the new AQMD requirement. And we can't sell it in the state, we have to sell it out of state.
They can't
It's
just
surplus.
replace the catalytic converter for an upgrade or something?
Well, they have to do that every couple of weeks anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Did we vote on this already? No. All right. We've got a motion and a second for approval of the consent calendar.
Yes, the motion is to approve the items on the consent calendar as submitted. Councilman Jindal?
Yes.
Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
The items on the consent calendar were approved as submitted. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, let me add one more thing, now that's approved. Item 10D and 10E, this is for the traffic signal at the
Oh,
intersection
yes,
of
yes.
California and Citrus.
Yeah.
At first, we planned to just bid it out for the installation of traffic signal. I found out that the signal cabinet have 10 months lead time. And the traffic signal pole have between 6 and 8 months lead time on this. So what we end up doing is we have to purchase it first, and maybe after 6 months, I will go out to bid for the installation of the traffic signal.
Are you going to do a bait and switch?
No, sir.
Okay.
Just to let you know like that, the other gentleman said we can't
Yeah, no, it's, we know about that. Okay. Vacancies in some of our committees. Actually, it looks like everybody's abandoning the committee structure.
Well, is this the total number of members, or is this the number of vacancies that is
So it is the total
parenthetically
number.
listed?
Yes. Well, I'm going to let Lynette go through the background. What happening is, since we have COVID, a lot of, pretty much all our committees' term have expired. All of them, with exception of historical, because historical, the city council just,
Historicals just stay forever.
yeah, well, but the thing is,
Part
you
of-
just
become part of the
appointed
history.
them. So I have a list, I don't know, should I include this in your package or not? We have,
I didn't see it.
we have a budget committee.
What is it we need to do tonight?
Well, tonight is, I want the city council to say, I'm gonna let Lynette
Okay, go ahead, Lynette.
open it up for,
We- We just need city council to declare the vacancies and to approve staff to advertise for those vacancies, and then we'll come back to the council in 2 months to appoint members for all the different various committees. I believe that the last time that this was done was back in 2018, and so I think maybe with COVID and committees not meeting, various committees were not meeting during COVID, that they weren't able to come back to reappoint for those committees. So all the members of the various committees, their terms have expired. So
Hey,
this is for us to move
Point of
forward.
order
on this.
real quick.
Go ahead.
We had talked about at the last council meeting, actually, an idea that Kurt came up with from our budget committee, that maybe that some of these committees be allowed to do some of their own interviewing processes, which might help them get a better fit, better mix as far as the committee goes, and would reduce our workload. And I know there was a strong support for it when we talked about it.
She never comes. I think that, I still think that's a good idea, particularly for a committee like the Budget Committee. I mean, that's a critical committee, and you need to have some kind of expertise on the committee, so I think that's a good idea.
And it doesn't necessarily conflict with what we have to do. We have to declare the
Sure.
vacancy. However, the comment was it's to bring it back to us in 2 months.
Right, right.
Electable. So I think we need to maybe avoid that part.
I don't want to avoid that part personally, because
That was a bad choice of words.
I can think of some people that I wouldn't want on some of these committees, so.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely. No, what I meant was that part of the agenda item, maybe we need to get a motion to declare the vacancies, and then however we decide we're gonna fill them.
Okay, I'll take that as a motion. Is there a second?
I wanted to move it. Okay, I'll second.
Okay. Okay, I think we're do you understand the motion?
I think I need
The,
to.
the, the
I
motion
unders-
was to declare, basically what you just recommended, declare the vacancies and advertise appropriately, and then bring the names back.
Well, I think part of that is contact everybody that wants, and find out who wants to stay on.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to just start from scratch.
No,
Yeah,
which we
oh,
have
yeah,
done.
that's what I intended. Yeah.
And so what I would do is, we contact all of the members of every committee, and we ask them, did they want to continue to be on the committee? And what we'll do is, in addition to advertise for the replacement for to fill in the vacant position, we will still would like the current committee members to still maybe update the application. So this way you have a chance to review them all.
Did you get all that, Lynette?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, so, yeah, the motion is what you recommended to us.
Okay, so the motion is to declare the vacancies for the above-noted committees, as stated on the report, and to direct staff, the clerk, to post the vacancy notice.
Okay.
Councilman Jindal?
Yes.
Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Well, further clarification, we also need to develop a staggering of terms, because all of them expired in a staggered way, but we're replacing them all at once.
Well, and that was a discussion that Jarb and I were speaking of, and currently all the members are still serving.
Yes.
And so we spoke about this, and I told him when they are reappointed, it would be based on from their expiration, or when their term expired. So if they expired in 2019 and the committee has a 4-year term, then
Okay.
it would be from 2019
Yeah,
forward.
so we may appoint them for,
Versus doing it all this year, but that was something Jarb and I were discussing, how that would be determined.
Can I,
they can keep their current staggering,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay.
And I vote yes.
Okay. Mayor Pro
Aye.
Tem Daley. Mayor Duper.
so I don't think we got to where we wanted to get. I think it's still a little murky. I think we need to figure out the process of how we want to do it. And I almost want to vote no, because I want to make sure we have a figured out process, not something that's just going to come in front of us in a couple of months and then we try to figure it out then.
It's better than the status quo, which is just one big mush bucket.
Yeah, no, I understand, but that's my point, is I don't want it to be a mush bucket anymore. I want us to figure out, honestly, somebody mentioned it a minute ago, and I can't see you guys at all, so it's kind of hard to follow along, but I kind of feel like we maybe need to reevaluate some of the folks that are on these committees. Based on what we've learned in the last few months, and stories we've heard from some of the committees and squabbles and issues that they're having, I don't think we're doing anybody any service by just reappointing people, so.
Including attendance.
Yes.
Yeah,
Records.
exactly. Yeah, so, go ahead.
And the mayor, so for example, like planning commission, in the past, the council actually interview the applicant or the, yes, yeah. So yes, the mayor usually have the opportunity to not just review the list and
Yeah, but
interview
remember,
the candidate.
What happened to the whole point of having the committees do the interviewing? Remember, that's what Kurt suggested.
That's fine.
Well, but my problem is we haven't codified anything by talking about it tonight. So,
What I like to do is at least give the staff an opportunity to advertise the vacant position and then bring it back and then you can tell us, okay, I would like to take it to the groups to select the committee and I can bring it back to the council and the council will say yes or no to the members. Or you can attend the committee meetings.
yeah, however we want to do it, I just think there needs to be more of a process.
No, I don't disagree with you. I think part of it is it's 9:30 and everybody's getting
Yeah.
tired, and we keep
Including me,
dealing with
so-
this, and my comment would be, yeah, we've even lost Milford Harrison now, so and when I see Dick start to wheel out, I'll know we're way over time. But I think the council has contributed to the problem, because when we have people showing interest in a committee, we just include them. But I agree with the perspective you share that, you know, there needs to be some kind of assessment. But I think, you know, the city council's been part of the problem in this too. In one case, I remember we just expanded the committee so we could include everybody that applied. So, what I guess I would suggest is that, you know, we discuss some of this among ourselves a little bit and work with the staff to come up with a more formal proposal and not try to rush the structure through tonight.
I agree, and with that, I vote yes.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I'd like to bring up, I understand the thinking behind it, and I think there's some strengths to it, but I always look to the other side too. One thing that I would worry about, if people might choose their own committee members, they might choose people who think the same way they do, and then we get a groupthink thing going on, and I'm not sure that we need to think about that.
And I agree, but I think that the check on that is it all has to be approved by city council too. And the question is, do we have the courage in city council to actually make those decisions? But, yeah, exactly. Okay, so,
So the motion is to declare the vacancy and to post the vacancy notice, and that was approved. And just to add, maybe even put on the next agenda, discussion on how to proceed with the process? Or,
I think we can do it informally, working with staff to come up with a proposal that would still have to be openly approved in council meeting.
okay. Well, this motion was approved. And just one more addition, when we did call the all the committee members, just to verify if they wanted to be reappointed, I was going to follow up with them to let them know that it didn't automatically guarantee reappointment.
Yes.
Because you were still going to review that, so.
Yeah.
There are people, no doubt, who have, it's going to be difficult because we didn't have a lot of meetings, but for the meetings we had, non-attendance should go against their candidacy.
That's another point we've talked about before, is whether there needs to be some kind of minimum attendance rate to sustain your membership. Okay. Reports from councilmen. Yeah, we voted on it. The mayor stalled us when he hesitated.
It was part of that mush bucket that I was talking about.
Reports from councilmen.
Got one here.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
One comment. So I spoke to our fire chief about this too. I've been getting a lot of reports from, not a lot again, a handful of reports from community members reporting dog abuse. I think it's because it's summer and people are leaving their dogs out. One in particular, though, it was kind of disturbing. And this is by our community garden, where there's a dog that has its ear cut off, flies around it, and it's limping. So I know our team's already looking at it, but if there's any help needed on our end from the city council, whether it's some kind of ordinance or something, do you want to put that out there? If anything we can do to. There's a few reports of dog abuse within the city where there's residents not taking care of their pets, so leaving them out in 110-degree weather, cuts, and so they've said they've done that and nothing's been done, or they haven't even received a report of any action. So either if we can receive that and we can relay that action was taken and they didn't find anything or something, but right now we have residents in limbo that are.
If that person can email me or call me, I will follow up with the county sheriff. So if they didn't report it, we have a sergeant right here, he has to follow up. So yeah. If they can just call me or email me, I will
Okay. And if people have already reported these, is there a way to find out from our end what action was taken?
Yes,
How would I do that?
you can email me or email the lieutenant.
Okay, cool. That was all I had.
Okay,
Thank you.
anyone else? Okay, officers.
Yes, I have one. I will be taking vacation from August the 15th, August the 19th to September 4th, 2 weeks vacation. And during
Is
that,
this up for a vote?
no,
or-
no, I just give you this information.
Oh, okay.
During my absence, Chief Dan Harker will be acting city manager.
Okay,
I'm going to visit my 94 years old mom, so just one thing I have to do.
that's a lot more important. And if I know Harkin, he'll change half the stuff that's going on in the city, so. Yeah. No, well deserved. Travel safe. And if you think it's hot here, when you go to Bangkok, you know what you're in for. Any other reports from officers? Okay, then we will adjourn the meeting. And please note on your agenda that we have a special meeting, as was noted earlier, for September 6th, the public hearing regarding this district-based. And I'm already concerned about what kind of turnout we'll have. 6 p.m., okay. Okay, now move on to Housing Authority. Consent calendar.
Move it.
Motion is to approve the consent calendar on the Housing Authority agenda as submitted. Councilman Jindal? Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
The items were approved as submitted.
Oh. Sure.
Every agenda has public comment.
Public comments? Dick, you have anything you want to say? Okay. Close public comments, and we can adjourn the meeting now, right? Or adjourn Housing Authority. Moving on to Redevelopment Agency. We'll do it in order this time. Public comments, open, closed, and consent
Move it.
calendar. Okay.
The motion is to approve the consent calendar items on the successor agency as submitted. Councilman Jindal? Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
The items were approved as submitted.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.